The question is that the motion be agreed to. Claire Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill represents a major and frightening expansion of government powers over New Zealand's communications networks and over those who provide services to New Zealanders on the internet. And that is a sobering prospect, Mr. Speaker. It is potentially a big step towards an authoritarian approach to government. This bill raises serious issues affecting the civil rights and personal privacy of New Zealanders and a lack of checks and balances. It provides extraordinary discretionary powers to the Minister on the advice of the GCSB. On the face of it, this bill could impose unreasonable and illogical costs on network operators to comply with the new requirements. On the face of it, it could capture small network operators such as schools, Wi-Fi communities, and result in unreasonable and unnecessary compliance and surveillance measures. It gives ministerial discretion to decide what sort of network should be captured. If, for instance, a network was established to provide information and provide a campaigning tool for an issues-based organisation, an NGO which was of a political nature, could the Minister, on the advice of the GCSB, decide that this was a threat to national security or economic well-being? This is a frightening thought, and it does go to the heart of democratic activity. On the face of it, this bill hands the control of the network design and operation of a telecommunications network to the GCSB in the name of, quote, security, which not only loads a level of bureaucracy and complexity to a legitimate commercial operation, but provides an extraordinary level of potential interference in that commercial operation. This bill gives sweeping powers to the Minister in charge of the GCSB to prevent, mitigate or remove a significant network security risk that could be national security or our economic well-being. In other words, to have the ability to shut down a network or part of a network should it not comply to its demands. And, Mr. Speaker, this is not supposition. This is how the bill reads. On the face of it, this bill contains no definition of the problem that's trying to be solved. And, Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to reiterate the words from the previous discussion around this bill, and that is that the privacy of New Zealand citizens count, the civil liberties of New Zealanders counts, and checks and balances count in all of our legislation. And they don't exist in the bill, in this bill, as it has been tabled in this House today. On the face of it, this bill should make New Zealanders afraid of what their government is trying to achieve. There are so many unanswered questions and too little information about the reason that this bill has been brought before us in this form, brought before us with no consultation, no discussion, no analysis of the problem that it intends to solve, no regulatory impact statement, a lack of checks and balances that would give the New Zealand public confidence in its security agencies and in its government. Labor supports the modernisation of legislation. Labor supports the need to ensure that New Zealanders and New Zealand businesses are protected from cyber threats. Let there be no doubt about that. Labor has serious concerns, though, about the two core underpinnings of this bill. The obligations being put on telecommunications companies and the changes to the interception capability regime, and deep concern about the introduction of a formal, transparent, so-called transparent network security regime and the sweeping powers that it gives to both the GCSB and the Minister. Mr Speaker, Labor cannot support this bill. Labor opposes this bill. This is about our national security, our human rights, about Kiwis' confidence in their security agencies and in their telecommunications agencies. And it's also about the confidence in the government and trust in our government that it will do the right thing. We want to see evidence-based analysis that would demonstrate the need for such sweeping powers and changes. Late on Monday night, I received a media release and email with a link to the bill before us. Last night, I received in my office a letter from the Minister for Communications and IT, regurgitating that media release that she'd sent out the day before. Less than 24 hours later, we have the first reading of this bill. There's been no briefing to the opposition on this bill. There's been, to my knowledge, no in-depth discussion with the industry about this bill. There is, as we have said, no regulatory impact statement released to the public. This bill sits alongside the Government Communications Security Bureau and Related Legislation Amendment Bill, which Labor also opposes. We believe that before such an overhaul can take place, there's got to be an independent inquiry into our intelligence agencies and, as I said, into an evidence-based approach to why this legislation is necessary. The process around this is incredibly shoddy, and it's quite frankly frightening because it shows that this government doesn't take seriously the concerns of citizens about the important checks and balances that such an important piece of legislation should contain. And I'm pleased to hear that it's going to a select committee that will actually the Law and Order Select Committee that will actually be able to have participation on it, and I certainly hope that there will be adequate time for those submissions to be held. This bill replaces the Telecommunications Interception Capability Act of 2004, but it adds a significant new component to the title, and that component is security. It also defines threats to our economic well-being as being security risks, but there's no definition about what that means, and that definition, it appears, lies with the Minister and the GCSB. There is in this legislation no independent oversight or accountability on what economic well-being or national security is. The process around getting this bill to this House has been shoddy. Yet the Prime Minister has said that he wants cross-party support. So why hasn't there been a discussion with the opposition parties about this bill? Why has there not been an explanation of the problems that require such sweeping powers to be given to a minister and to the GCSB? Why have we not been told that the existing intercept arrangements that exist right now between the surveillance agency and the telecommunications companies or the network operators are insufficient? What's wrong with those arrangements? Why hasn't there been a public discussion on that issue? We certainly know that there's been a raft of data breaches and security flaws exposed within government departments and agencies over recent months and the last year. Tens of thousands of New Zealanders have had their private information exposed because of lax processes and insufficient IT capability and expertise and governance arrangements across those government agencies. But will the bill solve those problems? No. Will it address any of those problems in any way? Is the government doing about those issues in any way? No. What are they doing? No. Will instead, will this bill make New Zealanders feel more safe and secure? My fear is that it's actually going to make them feel more vulnerable from intrusion into their privacy and civil liberties, and intrusions also, Mr Speaker, into the lawful commercial business activities of our network operators, and that is one of the potential dangers behind this bill. Will it have a chilling effect on innovation of network operation centres and the development of new services? That is a question, Mr Speaker, that is being asked today about this very issue. Could we see our economic well-being being undermined by this bill? New Zealanders should be aware that this bill covers their email, their texts, Twitter, other social media, Skype, private encrypted discussions through chat sites and cloud services such as Microsoft Link, Dropbox, Google Drive and Mega. It would include any business operating cloud services. It could cover the likes of Xero and TradeMe. The limits of the ministerial and GCSB powers have not been defined and they leave many questions unanswered.
Jackie Dean.
This bill, Mr Speaker, repeals and replaces the Telecommunications